On my boyfriend's birthday, I unexpectedly met my first love who had been declared dead. His exposed skin was covered with wounds. After being stunned for a while, he turned his head and begged me desperately, "Please don't look at me." Later I found out that the happiest moment of his day was when he heard my footsteps picking up his boyfriend from get off work. 1. I never thought that my farewell to Jack Ellis would be so unbearable. I was holding the cake and waiting for my current boyfriend, Luke Carr, to get off work. He stood at the window, and when our eyes met, his face was filled with horror. The skin and flesh on the left half of his face were stuck together, as if he had been burned by a fire. The moment he saw me, he put his hands up to cover his face without thinking. The moment he raised his hand, his sleeves fell down, revealing his exposed skin covered with wounds, some deep and some shallow, with several conspicuous scars winding along his arm. Jack hurriedly pulled up his sleeves to cover it. As soon as I opened my mouth, my voice was trembling. "You are still alive, why don't you come to find me?" I took 2 steps towards him, my legs were weak and my hands were shaking. He backed away in panic until he had nowhere to retreat, his voice trembling even more than mine. "Please don't look at me. Please." He kept repeating these 2 sentences, curled up into a ball, and stubbornly refused to look at me. In just a few seconds, the emotions I had been suppressing came over me like a huge wave. I just felt that my chest was filled with rainwater and was about to flow out of my eyes. I shook my head, unable to stop crying. "Don't do this, Jack. I have clearly thought about this thousands of times. I have clearly imagined time and again that he is still alive. I clearly miss him very much. But why I can't speak." Tears fell madly and I fell too. Jack squatted down slowly with a painful look on his face and buried his head deeply into his knees. He said to me in a crying voice that I had never heard in my life, "Don't come over here, I beg you." Jack's voice gradually became lower and lower, and every word seemed to hit my heart. "Chloe Sutton, I cheated on you, did you know?" I laughed bitterly. "You lied to me. You acted so badly, really. Jack, if you had been a little more ruthless, I would have believed it." 2. Jack and I were in a campus relationship for 4 years, but when we were about to graduate, he suddenly stopped contacting me. As complete as evaporating from the face of the earth. I tried every possible way to find his whereabouts, and after many twists and turns, I finally got the address of his parents. But after I explained my purpose, Jack's mother, who had been very moved, suddenly changed her expression. "I'm sorry, Jack is married. Don't look for it, good girl, just go home." As she said this, she was about to push me out of the door. I held her tightly with most of my body, begging her repeatedly, "Auntie, please let me see him. Consider this as a plea from me." In the past 4 years, he has remembered every little thing clearly, and has always been devoted to me. He even has time to reply to my messages while taking a shower. My relationship with him is very stable. The only thing left is for us to meet each other's parents. People who know us always have a positive attitude towards us and wish us well. How could I believe that the person I had been in love with for 4 years would marry someone without saying a word? There was a bit of sadness on her face, and she looked at me, hesitant to speak. "Our family is sorry for you, please go home soon." At this point, he refused to say another word. I stood alone outside the door, and was in a stalemate with her for a long time. When it lasted so long that I could hardly stand, the door was finally opened again. I looked at her hopefully. She frowned, her hand always on the door handle, ready to close the door at any time. "Jack told me that we will compensate you, so don't come looking for me anymore. We'll go back once we've achieved our goal. Okay?" Under her contemptuous gaze, I felt as if I was broken into millions of pieces. The ground is covered with my dignity and my worthless love. I choked with sobs, tears already falling. "Auntie, please let me see him. I don't want anything from you, I just want to see him. I just want to know what my 4 years are worth. He's married. Don't you understand what I'm saying? Did your family teach you that girls should have a sense of shame?" Her eyes were blurred with tears, but they couldn't hide her anger. I wiped my face randomly, trying to make myself look less embarrassed. Almost entirely relying on instinct, I answered her word by word. "Yes, but you don't seem to have taught your son to be sincere about other people's feelings." On the way back, it rained heavily. It was also a rainy day when Jack and I first met. I sat on the steps and cried loudly, but my voice was completely inaudible amid the sound of falling rain. But Jack not only heard it, he also came over and persuaded me to stop crying. He was really straight and said to me, "Don't cry, crying is ugly." I cried even louder. Unexpectedly, this attracted many passers-by to look back. Jack was still very young at that time, and he stood beside me at a loss. "It's not right to leave, and it's not right not to leave. Please stop crying. If someone doesn't know, they might think I'm bullying you." After some rustling sounds, he unscrewed a bottle of drink and handed it to me. I didn't take it, so he just held it there for a long time. I cried until I was out of breath, and I asked him between sobs, "Aren't you tired of holding it up?" He clenched his fist with pride and tapped his chest lightly. "No big deal, I'm a police academy student." My body was out of control as if it had been electrified. I grabbed his hand and said, "Uncle Police Officer, you have to make the decision for me." Jack was helpless, but still took me to the house of that man who refused to pay me and accused me of seducing students. I followed him, wiping my tears and guzzling the drink. To be honest, I don't like its smell. It seems like wet rainwater, and the same green plum as his eyes and eyebrows. However, the aftertaste is surprisingly sweet, enough to wash away the bitterness of youth. I got my salary back, received an apology from the family, and got his contact information. For many years I was trapped in that summer night. I have a very typical physique of tear incontinence. When I confront someone, tears come out before I even say a word. In the years that followed, Jack always said let him do it. He never makes me angry because he says, "You cry as soon as I talk to you, and it's hard for me to comfort you. But I can't help but coax you." 3. On the way back from Jack's house, I repeatedly told myself that it was okay. But it still hurts so much I can't stop it. "Jack, what should I do now? What should I do?" Half a month later, I received a large remittance. It is just enough to buy a commercial house in my small county town. Jack and I have mentioned this figure before. My eyes became sore as I stared at the text message of the incoming payment. 2 months later, I received the news of Jack's death. My friend said that the scumbag will get his comeuppance, and that this is his retribution. But I always feel that it shouldn't be like this. However, everything points to this outcome. We may still have a chance to meet again if we are separated in life, but I don't know how I can let go of the separation after death. What's more, he is Jack, my first love, who is like my white moonlight. I met him when I was 18, then fell in love with him, and lost contact with him when I was 21. I wandered around the world like a wandering soul until I was 25 years old. My parents kept urging me to get married, and I went to one blind date party after another, but I still stiffened my neck and shook my head. I don't know what to expect. At the age of 26, it was a rainy day. I was soaked all over, holding my bag to cover my body while waiting for the bus to come. Luke passed by and handed me an umbrella. Just like when I was 18, I sat on the steps and took the bottle of drink that Jack opened. The damp breath like rain has grown thick moss in my heart, which has remained green for 8 years. At that moment, I stared at his eyes and vaguely remembered the summer night when I was 18 years old. At that time, I didn't know that I would like someone so much. Just like I didn't know that I would run into Luke so many times later on. My second relationship was with Luke. It's the kind of love where adults get what they want and weigh the pros and cons. If nothing goes wrong, we will be engaged by the end of the year. 4. But now Jack shows up. The balance in my heart slid uncontrollably towards him. I never thought that those cliched storylines would happen to me. He just appeared briefly, but I was going to throw away my weapons and risk my life. "Jack." I slowly crouched down towards him, until my eyes were level with his. He shrank back and didn't look at me. "Come with me. I used the money you gave me to buy a house in my hometown, and the value has increased a lot over the years." I held out my hand to him and Jack looked up at me timidly. The cell phone rang suddenly. In an instant, all the color disappeared from his face. On the screen, the word Luke jumped wildly. What followed was the man's steady and powerful footsteps. "Chloe." The footsteps stopped in front of the ward and he called my name uncertainly. "Today is his birthday." Jack looked up at me as if he had mustered up the courage, and then quickly lowered his head. "I heard you're getting married soon, congratulations." He turned his face away and stopped looking at me. "I am sorry for you, but I sincerely hope you can be happy." I froze in place, looking at him in disbelief. How can you wish me happiness? How could you suddenly pull away when I was immersed in this relationship? When we met again many years later, he wished me happiness in a light-hearted way. When they said you were dead, I was in a daze every day. One night when I was taking a shower, I heard you calling me at the door. I didn't even dare to rinse off the foam. I just grabbed 2 pieces of clothes and ran out. But you were still not there. I clearly heard you. The feeling of stagnation swirled in the chest, pulling at it, then to the throat and nose, and finally dripping from the eyes. I kept calling you, and when I caught anyone I asked if they heard a man calling my name. My name is Chloe. They all said no, but I still didn't believe it. I kept asking and looking for you for a long time. Later, the neighbor next door checked the surveillance camera and showed me that no one had come to my door. Since then, I have always had trouble sleeping at night. I even wondered if Jack was just my fantasy. Realizing the resentment in my tone, I took a deep breath and slowed down before saying, I'm sorry. I am very aware that loving someone is my task, and I cannot force the other person to love me. It's just that I find it hard to completely control myself when facing Jack. But this is not a reason for me to vent my emotions at will. I am tear incontinent, and just because I like to cry doesn't mean I will avoid mistakes. The person outside the door seemed to be unable to wait any longer, and there was a sound of the doorknob being turned. I turned around to look at the turned doorknob and wiped my tears quickly. I'll break up with him. It's not because of you, it's because my heart is no longer sincere. I can't go on with him anymore. From the moment I met Jack, I knew I couldn't let it go. I couldn't be in this situation and pretend nothing happened and continue to be with Luke. No, Jack suddenly said, and his whole body began to tremble involuntarily. He likes you very much. His tone was low, as if he was repeating a reality that he was unwilling to admit. I pinched my hands to keep calm. I like you very much. So Jack, even if you have no feelings for me right now, you should still respect me. My friends once scolded me for being love-brained, but I know that's not the case. Even if Jack no longer loves me, even if we have reached the point where we are tired of each other, he will still take on the responsibilities he should take on and give this relationship a decent ending. So I never believed that he would cheat. Similarly, after I said this, Jack had nothing to say. 5. The moment the door was opened, Jack couldn't hide the panic on his face. He suddenly jumped behind the bed and curled up into a small ball. You can't tell unless you look carefully. Luke was wearing a white coat, buttoned up neatly, with a smile on his face and a gentle tone. Why are you here? I just called you, but you didn't answer. I looked up at him, speechless for a moment. Luke's face was full of heartache. Why are your eyes so swollen? What wronged you? Luke half squatted down and gently rubbed my red eyes. The warmth from his fingertips was transmitted through my thin skin and wandered around my eyes. I looked at his face and realized what I had done was truly cruel. Luke did nothing wrong, but he had to bear such an unexpected disaster. But I must admit that people are always biased. Luke sighed and opened his arms towards me, his eyes full of tenderness and love. Thank you for your hard work. Come and give me a hug. I took 2 steps back. The smile on his face froze for a moment, but soon returned to normal. What's wrong? I wasn't late on purpose. I was a little late today because of the patient in bed 3, the one I told you about 2 days ago. It's my fault. I'll apologize to you later, okay? I lowered my eyes and tried to sound sincere. Let's break up. You can ask for anything, and I will do my best to do it. Sorry. Luke was stunned, and unconsciously pulled at his sleeve with one hand, looking a little overwhelmed. But we were fine this morning. Did I do something wrong? Because I didn't expect fate to be so fickle. I shook my head at him. No, it's me. My heart is not sincere anymore, so I can't continue to be with you. I promise you that I will do my best to make up for all your losses. The smile on Luke's face disappeared completely, and his face was tense from his eyebrows to the corners of his lips, showing a feeling of displeasure. He rarely showed such emotions unless he couldn't help it. I felt guilty, and was about to be strangled by the heavy guilt. I was silent for a long time before continuing. I know that I can never make up for your efforts in this relationship. But as long as you ask, I will do my best to do it. Okay then. Luke's tone turned cold, the corners of his lips twitching slightly. I stared at the vamp anxiously and heard him say, "Can we set the wedding date earlier?" There was a hint of joking in his tone. I looked up suddenly and met Luke's smiling eyes. He curved his lips and raised his eyebrows slightly towards me. "Will you be able to be more honest with me after we get married? I want to know why you made such a decision. You don't look unhappy with me," he said in a joking tone. I just felt like the two ends of my soul were being pulled madly. I opened my mouth but couldn't utter the next word for a long time. Luke has always been very patient. He didn't rush me, but just waited quietly for my next words. There was an imperceptible sense of loss in his black eyes. My eyes fell on Jack, who didn't dare to look up. My heart felt like a lemon was pinched, and the sourness flowed into my mouth. The words I spoke seemed to be soaked in acid, sharp and hurtful. "You should know that I have a first love. He's back." I have always refused to believe the news of Jack's death. So I just told others that I had broken up peacefully with my first love. The version Luke got was the one I was talking about. "So I can only apologize to you. I can't stop thinking about him. Whenever he stands there, I want to be close to him. Love cannot be controlled, it is an instinctive reaction. It's so unfair. I know, but I really have no choice. Luke still has a healthy body, a decent job and a bright future. He will have a good life. But Jack, from the first moment I saw him today, I felt like he was going to break at any moment." 6. It's a cloudy day today and the light outside the window is dim. The light in Luke's eyes seemed to dim as well. A trace of sadness flashed across his face. "Do you really have to do this? We have always been in tune with each other, and have been enjoying each other since we fell in love." "Luke," I interrupted him. "Do you know why I fell in love with you? It's not because I can't handle the pressure from my family, nor is it because I will be judged by the world if I don't get married. If I wanted, I could be single forever. I can support myself and have enough energy to help the disadvantaged. I have the confidence to choose the life I want." Luke lowered his eyes and looked at me, his face serious. I said, "Because it was raining heavily that day and you handed me an umbrella." He smiled, a hint of amusement flashing across his eyes. "Because I'm kind? But I'm not so kind to everyone." I pursed my lips, tangled my hands together, and then separated them. Over and over again. This is not some kind of stand-in literature. I can tell the difference between Luke and Jack. Just at that moment, I naively thought that I could let it go. That night, I played "There Are So Many People in This World" in my headphones. There are so many people in this world / there is an open door in the crowd / it lasts forever in my misty eyes / the blue morning when I first saw you. There are so many people in this world, but I just happened to meet Jack. After Jack, I met Luke in a similar situation. It was raining heavily and I was in a miserable state, but a stranger extended a helping hand to me. Although I am no longer as anxious as I was at the age of 18 at the age of 26 at that moment, I still felt that my youth looked back at me and said to me, "Go forward, don't be obsessed." It is a very painful thing to be obsessed with a relationship that has ended, and to face a lover whom you will never see again. When I was 25, I told myself that this was God's will. The repeated encounters that followed made me even more certain of this. Luke's way of expressing his affection is very polite, just like a new sprout breaking through the soil, swaying in the wind, inadvertently testing you. As soon as I avoid it, the new sprouts will immediately shrink back. I don't dislike him, instead I find him kind of cute, awkward and sincere. I'm easily impressed by people like this. I just didn't expect it to come to this. It felt like a 1,000-pound weight was pressing down on me, making it hard for me to breathe. I really hope that in the blink of an eye, it will still be that rainy night and I didn't take the umbrella. Or maybe I should have just taken the umbrella and not had any other thoughts. I thought about it and said, no, because my first love and I met under similar circumstances. So, I stopped talking, leaving enough blank space for his imagination. The moment I finished speaking, Luke's eyes turned red. He looked away, lowered his gaze, and said in an indescribably muffled voice, "I know." He looked like he had a lot to say, but he didn't. They looked at each other in silence. I don't know how long it was before Luke looked down at me, wondering what he was thinking. Love is what you want it to be, not what I want it to be. So what you want it to be. I will communicate with my family, and I won't go to my uncle and aunt's place. When Luke left, He suddenly turned back and said, "Chloe, I will never love someone so sincerely again." There was unconcealable disappointment in his eyes. The door was closed. I couldn't see his face, but I could hear his suppressed but still trembling voice. "Well, I hope you're doing well. Happy birthday, Luke," I said silently. 7. The birthday cake was left there alone, announcing the complete end of my relationship. I walked up to Jack and he looked up at me blankly. "Jack, come with me. I won't get married." The last part of the song that day went like this. "There is a person in this world who lives in my youthful spirit whose long kiss soaked in tears often makes me miss him in a trance. He was my whole life from the age of 18 to 25. Jack didn't answer me, but I didn't care and sat down in the corner of the bed. I wanted to reach out and pull him up, but he subconsciously dodged. My hand fell empty. Jack looked guilty. I didn't mean it. There weren't many things in this ward, and it was obvious that no one had lived here for long. I controlled my tone so as not to sound too anxious. "Jack, are you going to keep shrinking like this? Stand up right there." He pursed his lips and stood up mechanically, but it still felt unnatural, and gave me the feeling that he might retreat at any moment. I stared at him, unwilling to miss even the slightest change on his face. "Where have you been all these years?" He turned his head somewhat embarrassedly. "You can see that I am neither human nor ghost now. Let's just assume that we are not destined to be together and forget it. Okay? Luke likes you very much, he will treat you well." I sneered. "I've been in love with you for so many years, and you just want to forget about it? Tell me honestly what happened to you. Is it difficult to talk about it? I don't believe in the idea of fate. I just know that if I want it, I will fight for it. Try every possible way and do my best to achieve the goal." He turned around and looked at me intently. "What can I say? I don't like you anymore. Is it hard to understand?" I looked at him and suddenly burst into tears. "You lied to me again." "But Jack, these words really hurt me. Even if you want to lie to me, you can't say them. I cry when I think about it. It makes me really sad." I sobbed, and when I couldn't hold back my tears, I wiped them with the back of my hand. "I really hate this physique. Every time when the critical moment comes, I cry like crazy. Stop crying." I turned a deaf ear to him and cried even harder. Jack was breathing heavily, and then someone pinched my chin and lifted my face. He wiped away my tears with his hands and said in a tone that was almost lighter than a sigh, "I don't have the face to see you. Chloe, I'm addicted." I swallowed, my heart racing and my chest heaving. "What did you say?" I clenched the phone in my hand, my mind was in a mess, and the only clear thought was to call the police. As if he saw through my thoughts, Jack added, "I got it while on a mission, but I've since given it up." I looked up at him suddenly. "So, is this why you cut off contact with me?" When I was 18, Jack was 20. He had already been working for 2 years when I just graduated at the age of 21. I thought it was only 2 years, but I didn't expect that there were actually thousands of mountains and rivers in between. "Then come with me." I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him when I was 18, and now I'm 28 and I still think so. Love has retroactive effect far beyond 10 years. He smiled and shook his head, saying, "Today is the happiest day I've had in years." "But don't. Do you know what you are facing? A man with a disfigured face and scars all over his body, and people will talk about you if you show him around." I tilted my head to look at him, my tone more resolute than ever before. "I don't care. During the years since you were gone, I have grown a lot. I can now stand on my own feet and have a seat at the company's decision-making level. I also insist on doing charity work. The elderly who have been helped have held my hand and told me that good people will be rewarded. Actually, I just want to hug you. The education I received made me a materialist, but my love made me willing to believe in reincarnation. I have done so many good things. God, please be more kind to my lover." But God did not have mercy on him. I was the only one who had mercy on him. 8. I still said, "Come with me." Just like when I was 18 years old, I cried and begged him to help me, and Jack said to me, "Come with me." When I was 19, my grandfather had heart surgery and my family wouldn't let me go home. I was at a loss, so Jack said to me, "Take a leave and I'll take you home." After sending me home, he rushed back to school. After my grandfather's surgery went well, I was ready to return to school, and he came to pick me up again. Long-distance relationships are not that hard for me. He always finds time to see me. On my 20th birthday, I made a wish to be with the man in front of me forever. When I blew out the candles, he said, "Chloe, when you graduate, come with me. I'll take you to meet my parents." At the age of 21, I was ready to go with him, but he didn't come. So just follow me. I don't break my promise. I won't let anyone wait for me for so many years. Jack still shook his head. You just broke up with Luke, and now you're with me. You're going to be subjected to a lot of hostility. I smiled softly and comforted him. I told you I don't care. I thought carefully about the malicious comments I saw when watching videos and guessed. What will they say about me? That I'm fickle, that I'm two-timing, that I'm a slut or a whore. None of this can hurt me. Don't you believe me? I have really grown a lot now. I'm not afraid. I can never stay completely calm in front of Jack. At this moment, I was like a little kid trying hard to prove that he could do it, reckless and thirsty. That's not how it works, Chloe. He turned his face to me with the relatively intact right half of his face, and said earnestly, I care. I was startled. Jack mostly faced me with only the right half of his face. Is it because of the burns on your face? Thinking of this, I couldn't help but ask out loud. Jack's lips were tight, and after a while of mental preparation, he finally spoke. I'm afraid of scaring you. It's a bit scary, isn't it? I stood up and stood on tiptoe to look at his face. Jack subconsciously tried to block, but I held his hand. Sensing his uneasiness, I scratched the palm of his hand, and his weak struggle quickly disappeared. That small half of the face was completely different from its former appearance. It was like an orange peel dried by the wind, with countless wrinkles and small patches of skin, creating an uneven skin tone. I didn't dare put my whole hand on it, so I just stretched out my index finger and touched it lightly. Did it hurt at that time? He avoided her gaze and said calmly, Not bad. I closed my eyes and circled back to the starting point. Will you come with me? I pointed a finger at him. One last time. The last time I read it today. I added a sentence silently in my heart. He still didn't agree. After staying with him until I could no longer stay, I stood up and said goodbye. As I was about to step out of the ward, I turned around. Jack was looking at me eagerly, but when I caught him suddenly, he quickly looked away. I pointed at the exquisitely packaged cake box and smiled at him. By the way, please help me give the cake to Luke. Wish him a happy birthday. Just as a good friend. Jack's face was full of surprise. He probably didn't expect that I would know that. I didn't explain, just closed the door and walked out. From beginning to end, I never mentioned Luke's name, but Jack called him as if he was familiar with him. You don't really think that the progress I've made over the years is just a joke, do you? 9. From then on, whenever I had free time, I would go to the hospital. Jack rarely speaks. Most of the time I am the one talking and he listens quietly. Although he didn't show any expression, I still felt that he was in a much better mood. I always see him standing outside the window, his eyes full of longing. But seeing how hard he was pretending, I just couldn't bear to expose him. Just when I thought he was going to give in, this guy is missing again. Standing in front of the empty ward, I felt a little frustrated. I can keep moving forward, but that doesn't mean I don't need any response at all. A door that I can't knock on, even if it has been opened for me before, will make me wonder if I am the one who makes him feel troubled. I held onto the door frame weakly, not wanting to think about anything. I just want to stand here, waste some time, and then make a decision. What are you standing here for? Are you looking for me? Without waiting for my reply, Luke answered, You can imagine that it's not. If you want to find Jack, go to his house. You have his address. He bent down, got close to me, and patted my head gently, just like countless times before. Once you have made a decision, stick to it. He stood up and smiled at me. Just consider it a thank you for the birthday cake. It's not too cruel. Wait, I blurted out a word. But my mind was so confused that I didn't even have time to say thank you. Luke paused, without looking back, and waved his hand casually. Jack really likes you. I won't say a blessing, it would be against my will. He walked deeper into the room. The sunlight on both sides of the windows was bright, transparent, and warm. Just like him, open and honest. I have always had a good eye for people. Luke is also good, but he is not suitable and the timing is not right. He deserves better. I finally understand why those couples who can still sincerely wish each other well after breaking up really exist. Because both parties are good people, separation will only bring blessings to each other instead of resentment. I felt something flash by and I missed it, but the desire to see Jack outweighed everything, so I didn't think about it anymore. 10. When I left Jack's house crying, I never thought that I would set foot on this land again. At that time, I had already crossed out City C from my life plan for the next few decades. As if this could provide some comfort. This time my state of mind was completely different. I came here with the determination to resolve all my questions. It was Jack's mother who opened the door. She looked extremely haggard. Time seemed to be particularly harsh on her. My 10 years took her more than 20 years. I was about to introduce myself when she seemed to recognize me. Why are you still here? Jack's been gone for so many years, can't you let go? I held the door with one hand with a funny look on my face. Auntie, didn't Jack tell you that I met him? What kind of mother would curse her son to death? She didn't even have time to retract the harsh look on her face. She just opened her mouth blankly and muttered, "Have I met you before?" "So I have met you before." She showed a little surprise, her eyes shining like a light. "He didn't even tell me you were coming, really? I haven't prepared anything. Come on, come in and sit down." I was afraid that Jack's mother must have misunderstood, but I didn't explain and just followed her in. The house was decorated simply, but the furnishings were arranged neatly. There were fresh flowers in the vase on the dining table. It was obvious that Jack's mother was a particular person. "Xiaojiang, what would you like to drink?" I'm not surprised that Jack's mother knows my name. At this moment, I suddenly thought of Luke's words. How did he know that I had Jack's house address? "Little Jiang." Jack's mother's voice interrupted my thoughts and I hurriedly said, "Boiled water will do." After taking the water from Jack's mother, I took a sip and put it aside and went straight to the point. "Auntie, what happened before?" I paused at the right moment, and Jack's mother quickly took over the conversation. "It was my fault for what happened before. But I really can't think of a better way. Please forgive my selfishness as a mother. Jack was injured so badly that I wish I could keep you here so that I can tie you to my life and let you take care of him. But Jack said he would not allow me to do anything, saying that you are going to get married and we cannot harm you. I think about it, this is my son. I taught him he has a good character. If I were your mother, I would never allow you to jump on this kind of Kong. Put yourself in his shoes, we really cannot harm you. I didn't expect that after all these years, you guys would still be together." I could feel the joy in her tone, so I asked her tentatively, "How has Jack been doing these years?" In fact, his current situation has already shown that he is not living well. But I still have some wishful thinking, hoping that he will be fine during my absence. "He can't be called good or bad, but at least he's alive," Jack's mother said, revealing a bit of childish helplessness. "Let's take it one day at a time. Who knows what the future will bring?" His father was a drug enforcement officer who died early, and he hasn't seen his father since he opened his eyes. I didn't tell him much about this, for fear that he would inherit his father's legacy. In the end, he went there secretly without telling me, and I didn't tell him much. Her shoulders slumped and she covered her face helplessly. To outsiders it may seem glorious and proud, but I am just an ordinary person. I want to see them doing well, but that is a luxury. When you came to me, I was afraid that you would follow in my footsteps. Over the years I have raised Jack alone. Only I know the bitterness of it. Jack told me that he didn't have a father, so he felt particularly sorry for his mother. In his description, his mother was a knight who fought through all difficulties during the day, and a princess in distress who secretly shed tears in front of his father's photo at night. Love is so great that one has to put on armor for her, yet so small that one has to pin one's lifelong thoughts on a thin piece of photo paper. Can I really entrust it to you? Jack's mother didn't know what I was thinking, and her voice continued. You have to worry about the safety of your partner every day, and you also have to worry about whether your family will be implicated. Those drug dealers are all desperate criminals. As long as one of them is not caught, you will be worried. The gangs that Jack was in charge of have been arrested. You don't have to worry about them anymore. But don't worry, we won't rely on you. If you want to accompany Jack, you can accompany him. If you don't like him anymore, we can separate. When he first came back, his desire to live was low. He didn't like to talk, but he was trying hard to comfort me. I felt like this child was gone, just like a lifeless piece of wood. The door of the room was closed tightly and the curtains were not allowed to be drawn. Fine. I listened carefully, and my heart ached as she spoke. A male voice suddenly interrupted her. Mom, what are you talking about? Jack stood on the escalator, frowning in disapproval. Jack's mother choked and her eyes moved back and forth between Jack and me. I touched my hair uncomfortably and smiled. Aunt, we have met before. Jack ran away and refused to see me, so I came here to find him. Oh, I don't understand your affairs. Jack's mother waved her hands helplessly. She stood up from her chair and bowed deeply to me. I hurried to help her, but she gently brushed my hand away and whispered in my ear, "Thank you. Auntie is really grateful that you like Jack. Whether you like it or not in the future, Auntie is very grateful to you." Jack walked over to me and Jack's mother smiled gently. You guys chat, I don't understand you young people. Seeing Jack's mother going to the kitchen, I took the initiative and grabbed Jack by the collar. He bent down to cooperate with me patiently, his eyelashes trembling slightly. Oh, why are you running? You made me come all this way to find you. How can you do it better than me? He laughed silently. I let go of him and pressed my cheek against his chest. I finally felt at ease when I heard the steady, powerful beating of his heart. Jack was stunned for a long time. Then he carefully put his hands on my waist and gave me a deep hug. The scene that appeared frequently in my dreams finally came true today. Jack, come back with me. I forgive you for leaving without saying goodbye. People always sing praises of bravery, but never talk about the price behind it. I actually don't fully understand Jack. He just needed to tell me and I would never abandon him. If you keep pushing me away, I'll be sad. But with Jack's mother, I vaguely saw something different. I sincerely hope that when he is well, he will also be well for me. As expected, Jack rejected me. You have to live a good life. I looked up at him. What about you? Such an intimate act, two hearts that are in tune with each other. But he still has to pretend not to care. I will live a good life too. I pressed my body closer to his, not looking at his expression, and nodded perfunctorily in his arms. Then let's wait for the first rainstorm of this summer. Then we'll be together again. You must promise me. I wanted to talk to him properly, but I still wet his clothes with my tears. When you were away, I would go to the local temple wherever I went and pray to God to be kind to you. When I interpreted the fortune, a monk told me that our fortune had a bad start. I sat there crying on a rainy summer night, so the ending was not good either. I really regret it. I wish I had held back my tears. But when I think of you, I cry for a while under the covers every day when I get home. When the first rainstorm comes this summer, I will not shed a single tear. We are together again and all the bad things are over. This is a great start. I knew what Jack was going to say without him even saying anything. I said first, if you reject me again, I will hate you for the rest of my life. So let me love you. Love is more powerful than hate. This way I can live a good life. Jack lowered his eyes, looking like he was struggling internally. I curled up in his arms, crying and shaking. He patted my back gently, his voice clear and mellow, with a slight rise at the end. Summer is coming soon. The first rain we've been waiting for is coming soon. Love cannot overcome all difficulties, only loving each other can. I finally escaped from the summer night that trapped me. This time with the one I love. Extra. 1. Jack never imagined that he would become addicted. It was injected into his body by force when his undercover mission was discovered. When the attack occurred, the pain was so unbearable that the group of people asked him to kneel down and beg them. See? The police are about to kneel down to us traffickers. Ha 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 ha. Record it quick. He couldn't see clearly. He could only hear the group of people laughing arrogantly. Jack's mouth was bleeding from being bitten by himself. He punched himself hard in the face, strangled his neck madly with one hand, and almost fainted. But he was kicked to the ground. Damn, you're so stubborn. Are you looking for death? I will do it for you. Fists, kicks, sticks, and even a handy chair were all thrown at him. He was kicked back and forth like a ball. He was completely unable to think and every part of his body was screaming in pain. Someone pulled me up and I saw dancing fireworks in front of me. The man pressed his face into the fire, like countless electric drills, and he was shaking with pain. The smell of burnt flesh was on his face and a horrified scream came out of his mouth. The group of people looked at this scene with satisfaction and laughed even more exaggeratedly. 2. Just when Jack thought he was going to die, he was rescued. The senior who carried out the undercover mission with him did not come back. Later he found out that the scene was extremely tragic, and that the senior's eyeballs had been dug out and crushed. If it had been a little later, he would have ended up like this. 3. The first thing Jack said after he opened his eyes was that he asked his mother to tell his girlfriend not to wait for him because he was getting married. Fortunately, he managed to survive. But what followed was a long period of withdrawal and treatment. Every time the addiction struck, he hated himself uncontrollably. It was as if the blood flowing in his body was no longer his own, but that of his father and fallen comrades. He felt like a vessel for sin. Jack could never forgive himself. In the mirror, he looked at the face that could never be restored and felt that his girlfriend would be scared. She is too timid and will be scared to tears. Jack didn't want her to cry. He said to his mother, "Mom, I don't want to have treatment anymore. My face is like this. Can you give the money to Chloe?" His mother sighed. "You paid half your life for this. I'll only give it to her if she deserves it." It turns out that his girlfriend is indeed a very good and worthy person. Chloe came to see him, but was blocked outside by his mother. At this point, as a mother, she really wanted to keep Chloe. But the son begged her. "What has she done wrong? I'm already ruined. Do I have to ruin her life? Mom, please help me and don't make things difficult for her." Chloe didn't know that when she went home crying, someone was holding back his tears and watching her leave from the windowsill. He didn't dare to see her, fearing her disappointed look. He was not afraid of her hatred. He was afraid that she would not live a good life. 4. The first time Luke heard the name Chloe was from his longtime friend Jack. Jack tried to hold back his laughter throughout the party. Luke couldn't hold back his curiosity and asked him what happened. Jack said that he just came back from his girlfriend's school yesterday, and when he was leaving, Chloe acted like a spoiled child and didn't want him to leave. Luke felt that his friend was simply mentally ill. "Is it that serious?" Luke took a sip of his drink, looking very disdainful. Jack glanced at him nonchalantly. "You don't understand." Luke was too lazy to understand. He was studying medicine and was very busy. Logically speaking, Jack is also very busy. So Luke couldn't understand where Jack found the time to fall in love. 5. Jack is in love and Luke is studying. Jack is working and Luke is studying. When Jack was injured beyond recognition, Luke was still reading. Seeing his friend in pain, Luke felt very uncomfortable. And Jack's girlfriend, the girl named Chloe, is looking for clues about Jack everywhere. Luke is a medical student. He has witnessed many life and death situations with his teacher, and knows that life is always unpredictable. But he couldn't bear to see his friend suffer, and Chloe crying so hard that she was out of breath, so he asked him if something happened to Jack. "Lovers, why should we separate?" He secretly gave her Jack's home address. 6. Jack has been secretly following Chloe's movements. He always wrote very long replies at night, turned off the internet and sent them to her. Afraid that she knows, but also afraid that she doesn't know. But compared to both of them suffering, it is better for him. If someone must suffer, he suffers. If someone has to carry it, he will do it. It was inconvenient for him to show up, so he always asked Luke to help him. When Jack saw Chloe saying in the circle of friends that she was trapped by heavy rain, he pestered his best friend to rush to that location to give her an umbrella. My friend Luke, who is studying medicine and is still studying. As if he had found the right method, Jack asked his friends to help Chloe more and more frequently. And for Luke, seeing Jack's spirits lifted is worth more than anything else. 7. After a while, the two people always met each other. Luke couldn't keep the truth secret, and before he could suppress the throbbing in his heart, Jack revealed it. "Are you in love with her?" He was frightened and felt guilty, and nodded silently under the gaze of his friend. "It's normal. She's so outstanding, it's normal for you to like her. You should be good to her, and I will bless you too." Jack knew Chloe's personality, temper, likes and dislikes too well. With just a little guidance from him, Luke could become the perfect boyfriend Chloe needs. Like torturing himself, he was admitted to the same hospital as Luke, ostensibly for his health, but both of them knew exactly why. Since Luke didn't point it out, Jack didn't say anything either. During the long days, he began to wait. Hearing Chloe's footsteps coming to pick Luke up from get off work was the happiest moment of his day. Although every time he was happy, Chloe ran to Luke. But Jack thinks this is also good. Chloe is good, Luke is good too. Two such good people together will only get better and better. Seeing that the people he loves and cares about are doing well. Isn't this the meaning of his father, him and countless brave people fighting to protect the country? But when his mother asked him, "What about you?" he was slow to answer. 8. Luke suggested that Jack be moved to another ward. Luke convinced him with just one reason. The view there is better. The view is better and I can see Chloe earlier every day. Jack was very grateful for his friend's consideration and for protecting his little dignity. Everything is as usual. It's just that he sat by the window for obviously longer. Luke saw it inside. 9. On Luke's birthday, Chloe didn't take her usual route. Jack bumped into her, who walked in accidentally. After hiding for so many years, he was now completely exposed in front of her. Pretending to be calm on the surface, but turbulent waves inside. He couldn't imagine what Chloe would think of him. He felt like a rat that was afraid of the light and had been looking at her secretly. He wants to go home. Chloe wouldn't let him leave, and when she started crying, he lost his composure. And his best friend, still unaware, was calling her name outside the door. Jack felt like he was back in the days when he was sick in bed. He felt sick. Chloe said she wanted to break up. He only had time to say a few words of advice before his friend opened the door. Jack hid in panic. But he forgot that it was Luke who asked him to move here. So Luke saw him right away. 10. Jack didn't want to hurt him. Luke felt the same way. But unlike what Chloe thought, Luke did have some true feelings for her. But every time when Luke saw his friend waiting for Chloe with great anticipation and carefully hiding his feelings in front of him, he felt really bad. When he was in the most difficult time, Jack divided his living expenses into two and gave him one share. During the holidays, other students had places to go, but he didn't. Jack took him home and asked his mother to save a meal for him. Jack never mentioned these past events, but that didn't mean he couldn't remember them. He had Jack move to another ward closer to her. He asked Chloe to find him via another route, which would easily allow them to see the ward where Jack was. The only selfish thing Luke had was that he chose his birthday. He thought maybe this way Chloe would be more inclined towards him? But no, fortunately not. It's all because the people he met were so nice. If Jack resented him, if Chloe wavered, he could continue to maintain this relationship with peace of mind. Unfortunately no, fortunately no. Jack brought the birthday cake left by Chloe to celebrate his birthday, his face full of guilt. Luke felt relieved that his sincerity was not in vain. He was also truly happy when he was with Chloe. That's enough. 11. Despite Luke's consolation, Jack still felt guilty about him. After struggling, Jack left. Luke was thinking, why should lovers be separated? He had helped Chloe many times, and this time was no exception. So he asked Chloe to go to Jack's house to find him early. But for Luke himself, being loved is not the only value in his life. He loves medicine and has the lofty ideal of saving lives and healing the wounded. Although he has had moments of retreat and has felt disheartened by some patients, he has never regretted his choice. He always felt that he made the right decision when filling out his college entrance examination application form. The profession of medicine is great, and the responsibility of medicine is heavy. He still has a long way to go.